All right, give her another try. Okay, let her cool down for a little while, but boy, I tell you what, she sure does sound good. Well, hey folks, this is Ken, and thank you for tuning in to the Model Building and Retirement channel. So we just built the 1956 Chevy Del Rey, and we're just trying to get the engine tuned and running here, and we're having a little bit of a fit, but we'll get her settled in no time. We'll tell you all about the build right after the intro. Sponsored by Model Makers Workshop. Need parts for your next model project? Model Makers Workshop has you covered with the best aftermarket accessories around. And by Gallery, your one-stop shopping for all your airbrush needs. Okay, before I get into the build, I want to do a huge shout out and a thank you to Papa over at Papa's Model Workshop. A couple months ago, he built the 1956 Del Rey and did a beautiful job on it. And I had commented about how beautiful the car was, and an additional comment saying, I wish I would have picked it up while it was available, because the stores near me had it, but it was no longer available to me. So he emailed me that very night. He says he thought he knew where one was. And the very next day, he emails me and says there's a package on the way. And sure enough, Papa bought a brand new model and sent it to me and wouldn't let me reimburse him. So he sent me the model for free. He paid for the shipping, wouldn't take a dime for it. Papa, you're a great man, a good friend. And folks, you got to check out his channel. He's got a really great channel, and he's just at the cusp of 1,000 subs. His channel's starting to really take off. And he does a lot of similar stuff that I do. He does tutorials and some real good builds and how-tos and stuff. So check him out. I'll have a link in the description for him. And I got a lot of firsts in this build here. First of all, I got big 572 big block, complements of, it's a 3D printed motor, complements of Model Makers Workshop. And I'll have a link in my description because you can get 10% off any 3D aftermarket part from them if you use my code and my link. On top of that, I started doing spark plug wires, but this time I went all out. I did plumbing, I did fuel lines, I did brake lines, I did battery, and I did the spark plug wires. So a lot of firsts for me here, and fitting that big 572 in was quite of a chore, but I managed to pull it off. So a lot of fun building this, and let's get to the video. Okay, so on to the next build. This is the 1956 Chevrolet Del Rey 2-in-1 kit. I'm going to start out with our unboxing. I love the box art on front of that. Okay, so we start out with our glass, and I can see that there is separately applied headlights, which I like a lot. These more modern kits do that. And okay, so I'm going to leave all that sealed up so I don't scratch any of the glass. Okay, then we get the body. Let me get that cut open. Okay, so now you got your classic 56 Chevy body. Looks pretty good. I'll have to inspect that really good. But it looks pretty crisp from what I see here. Kind of has a headliner built into it already. Good looking body. And then it comes with tires, and it looks like we have a couple options there. Once again, I think they're no names. Yeah, decent looking tires, but they, you know, no names on them. Next up, we got some interior pieces. Those look like they're going to be possibly, I'm going to guess, white walls. Suspension and rear end. Wheel, suspension, and differential parts. Bottom of the interior tub with the back seat. Then we got our chassis. Looks like we got our wheel backs, hood hinges, miscellaneous engine compartment pieces. Radiator support, firewall, radiator support, radiator, engine block, valve covers, engine pieces, which I'm probably not going to use any of that. I'm going to use a big 572 big block in this model. Okay, then what else we got? Okay, now we got our firewall, rear leaf springs, upper control arms, exhaust, suspension, and trunk pieces. Gas tank and spare tire well. Okay, then we got our hood. Got some steely wheels, which is cool, but I won't be using those either. I'm going to be going some aftermarket. And then we got nice side panels and a valance. I like to collect the steely wheels though, because there are going to be kits where I do definitely want to use those. Okay, so this is for the custom look. Not bad looking wheels. I hadn't picked my wheels yet. I was thinking aftermarket, but you know, I'll have to consider these. They're not bad looking. Got some red lenses for the taillights. Okay, then we got a chrome tree with bumpers, grille, mirrors, license plate holders, hubcaps, dashboard pieces, bezels, you name it. Revell instruction sheet. So you can either build it bone stock or you can do the Del Rey custom model. I'm kind of going in between the two. I'm going to try to build like the Boyd Coddington Junkyard Dog 56 Chevy that they built on American Hot Rod back in the day. But your typical trusty Revell instruction sheet. And then we got our decals. Okay. All right, so it looks like you got slotted brake discs. Looks like instrument decals, license plates. I won't be using the side stripes, but some decent decals. I'll be utilizing some of those. Okay, next I'll show you the aftermarket parts I've already set aside. Okay, so this is another build that I'm going to do. It's going to be like a Pro Street version. So I am going to be throwing some aftermarket parts into it. So I'm going to start with another 572 big block engine, 3D printed, and this is from modelmakersworkshop.com, and I'll have a code up above there for 10% discount. MBIR10 will get you 10% off, and I have a link in my description. So this is the basic engine kit, and then I'm going to be pairing it with their add-on 572 Ram Air Kit, which I've already debagged because I'm getting ready to primer here. But you got tunnel ram, nice stack on top, or you can do velocity stacks, double carburetor, some spare valve covers, optional valve covers, you know, miscellaneous pieces. So what's nice about their kits is you can buy their basic engine, which is everything you need, including an air cleaner for just a base engine. But if you want to do something custom, they've got add-on packs. So they've got a supercharged kit. They got a velocity stack kit. They got the ram air kit. So go to their website, check them out. Okay, then it's going to take some mock-up to see what I like best. Whether I use the kit wheels or I got these aftermarket wheels here. These I picked up at a show. The only thing I stole out of this was the disc brakes, but the kit looks like that had molded in brakes, so I'll probably be able to use those. So I'll be mocking up and testing that. And then I've got these really big over-the-top size wheels from Hornet Street Wire wheels. So I got 22-inch for the front and 24-inch for the back, and these are from Model Maker's Workshop. And I'll be mocking it up to see if I like those. I might use torque flight weight wheels. I probably have some engine compartment details like batteries or whatnot, and I'll be doing a wired battery or a wired block. I'm not sure about the interior. You know, I may throw some aftermarket parts in there, or I'll look at stock. I'll just take a look at my options as I go along. I still want the car to look like a stock car, but I want it to be all heavily modified. All right, we'll be back. Okay, so to fit that big 572 3D printed big block engine into the chassis, going to take some modifications here. I'm looking at a comparison between the 3D printed engine and the kit engine. And the kit engine's probably a 283 small block, but still there's a considerable size difference. Even like the valve covers you'll see are tiny compared to the new engine. So what I ended up doing is I just used my Dremel with a sanding drum on there, and I just kept whittling away at that engine cradle and trimming and trimming and trimming until I got the engine to sit low enough. Because even though the engine would sit in the engine compartment and you can shut the hood, I was having an issue with the header collectors not clearing the bottom of the chassis. So as I said, I used my little Dremel here, and I bought that off of Amazon. I'll have a link in my description. But putting that little barrel sanding drum on there really does a good job for sanding. And it comes with all these little attachments too, so there's quite a bit of stuff you can do. You can even buff with this too. I bought some buffing pads. I rarely use them though, because I like to hand buff. But I'm going to hog out that engine cradle here, and I'll have a little bit of video showing how I ground that. So I just carefully, on low speed so I wouldn't melt the plastic, just carefully massaged it left and right and feathered all my edges. And it took away material. You know, I took my time. I mean, I probably spent a good hour on this because I didn't want to take too much away. And I marked areas where the headers were going to hit, so you see me cleaning up some black marks there. And it all worked out just great. Okay, so for solving the last of my fitment issues on the front radiator support, I got to looking at that, and there's a lot of wasted space in front of the radiator, between the bumper and the radiator, the grill area. So what I had decided to do was take my scriber and just totally cut out that area of the styrene, and I just scribed until it would actually cut away for me, and then I glued the radiator to the front. You just keep scoring little by little by little, and it'll come apart like that. And then I just glued that radiator right onto the front with some super glue, and problem solved. Okay, so I was looking at that firewall and clearance-wise, and I decided to make my own out of scratch there. So what I did is I made a little template by tacking that onto a piece of styrene and spraying there, and that kind of gave it a little imprint of what it looked like, so I can cut along the styrene. And I made my own, and then I cut off those lower brackets from this one and installed them on the other firewall for some extra strength. Okay, so here's my fabricated firewall here, and got the battery installed there and the brake system. Now I ended up going through the brake system because I remember my buddy Joe from Joe's New Rust Shop YouTube channel. he gave me a whole big bag of styrene parts because he does commission builds for stock car racers. And I figured there had to have been some master cylinders in his kit there, or bag. And sure enough, I found a power brake booster and installed that too, because you're not going to have a big 572 big block with manual brakes and a single piston. So I did fix that in the end. You'll see it when I show you the engine compartment a little bit later. Okay, so while I was working on the fitment issues with the motor, I had been working on the paint job as well. So it's now in total base coat, and this is going to be on a total separate video, and I'll have a link in the description. So here I've got the base coat on there. I have not cleared yet. Before I clear, I'm going to be going to decals and bare metal foil, which will be included in this video, and then it'll be clear coated. Okay, so next up, I am going to apply some decals to the car, and they're only going to be the factory decals, actually, emblems and whatnot. I'm not going to be doing the stripes. I'm going to do that before the clear coat. All right, so I'm going to get some of these cut up and installed, and I'll go fast forward for that. Okay, so next up I'm doing all the bare metal foil work, and I'm doing this before the clear coat. I'm going to bury that in clear, hopefully seal that into place a little bit better so that it doesn't ever peel up during handling. I'm going to go 8x speed up here for you. Okay, so all the bare metal foil has been completed, and I have also clear coated the car. It is still curing, but it'll still need sanded and buffed, which will be part of the paint video. But quite a bit of chrome on there. It came out pretty nice. The model kit is not the best as far as definition goes. I had to scribe a lot of this stuff before I even painted because I could tell that it wasn't very defined. But it's just not molded really good. I'm sure this thing has been around for a while, so it's been re-released so many times that, you know, some of the definition is lost, but is what it is. I think it looks all right. Okay, so we're going to let that cure up, and we'll get to doing more paint work on the details of the suspension and chassis and get going on the interior. Okay, so next up, the wheels on the 56. I just want to tone down that toy chrome. And I had a choice. I could strip them and paint them gloss black, or strip them and paint them, re-chrome them. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hit them with Tamiya Smoke X19, and that'll just tone them down a little bit, give them a little bit of more depth. And then I decided to tint my windows as well, same way. So what I'm doing is I'm masking the outside of the lenses so I don't get any overspray on them. And I'm going to spray the smoke on the inside of the glass, and that will give me tinted windows. So what I've already got is a 50-50 mix of Tamiya X19 and Mr. Hobby leveling thinner. Mix 50-50, airbrush ready. I just kind of keep that sealed up in a bottle here. So let's go to the booth and I'll show you how I apply that. Okay, so once again, we're at the booth here, and I'm using my Mobius 0.3 millimeter airbrush, and I'm spraying light to medium coats, 4 in total, and you're just going to layer this on little by little, and you got to let it set up for, you know, a couple minutes in between coats. Of course, on my editing here, it's going to look like it was instantaneous, but, you know, wait about 5 minutes between coats, let that set up so that you're building up your paint a little bit instead of running it. I will go ahead and speed this up. Okay, so here's an image of the rim after I had sprayed that smoke clear from Tamiya on there, 4 coats. Looks really good, and I also used a little bit of panel liner right there by the lug nuts. Okay, so I got the tinted windows installed into the car. And I wasn't happy with my bare metal foil on the back roof there, so I redid that. And then also I have totally sanded down, buffed and polished the body. And that is all still in that other video on how to get a show car finish using Kaleido paints. So once again, a link in the description if you want to see the full paint job and prep work to get the finish done. But I'm not going to include that into this video. So it looks really good. All the windows installed with just Mod Podge glue, and just carefully worked it up into the edges of the glass there. Okay, so next up we're going to work on the interior. Okay, so on the interior I'm going to do a two-tone paint job, and I did a little bit of research there. I'll put a picture up on the screen here showing what the upholstery should look like if you're going to do two-tone. And I'm going to use my vinyl fine line tape for a crisp edge, and then frog tape for my masking everything else. I like the vinyl tape because it just leaves such a nice crisp edge. So I'm going to start with that, and I'll do this off camera so I can see what I'm doing, and we'll be back. All right, so here we see all the upholstery has been masked off here. Pretty tedious work. Just take your time. And what I was using here is a scalpel, a number 11 scalpel. It's very much like a number 11 X-Acto knife, except for it is extremely sharp and precise. I started using that for my bare metal foil too. You got to be extremely careful though, because it's very easy to cut through the paint because it is that sharp. I'll have a link in my description for where you can get those. One other tip I want to give you too is with your masking tape and your fine line tape or whatever you're using to mask when you paint, is always protect the edges. If you notice there, my fine line tape is all sitting on the bags that they come in. That darker blue vinyl fine line I've had for like 20 years, and you can see it's still pretty pristine there, because you don't want to set that down on any dirt, dust, or cloth or carpet or anything of that nature, because it's going to pick up stuff with the adhesive, and when you try to get a good crisp line, you're going to have dust and little hairs and all kinds of things in your way that are going to screw up your paint job. So want to keep everything nice and tidy and detail oriented. So the second color I chose for the interior is from Kaleido Color Works Metal Colors, and this is going to be tungsten. And I'm going to be spraying that straight out of the bottle, about 20 psi, and I'm going to be spraying a very, very, very light dust coat because this stuff covers extremely well. So let's get over to the booth. So before I even get started, I do one last check of my masking, make sure everything's pressed down really good and hasn't lifted on me. Another good tip for you is, like on the tops of doors, for example, the window cranks kind of were in the way a little bit. Now you could mask with bare metal foil to really get a good tight mask there, but I chose not to do that. But a trick you can do, if you notice the airbrush position here, is to aim away from that edge and just give it a light little coat that way. And that way nothing's going to bleed through up and under that tape. So if you have a critical edge, spray away from that edge and that'll help you. A second tip I want to share is I'm going to also be spraying in this session different colors of the metal colors. So the exhaust is going to be painted stainless. And what I'm going to do here is I have a mug there of hot water, microwave for about a minute just to get it nice and warm, actually, not boiling hot. And what I'll do is I'll exhaust the paint out of the gun for the first color, and then I will rinse with a pipette until I start squirting clear out of my brush, and then I'll add my next color. That way you don't have to break down your brush and do a thorough cleanup until you're done with your entire session. So let's get to painting. So I just put a few drops into my cup here and getting ready to do a little spray out on a spoon to make sure it's shooting real good. And that happened. I don't know if you caught that, but the very tip, this is what happens if you don't have your very tip on very tight. I'll play that back in slow motion, but when I went to put paint onto that spoon, it was like I was backwashing and it just shot the paint right out of the cup. Okay, so I got the airbrush all squared away and everything's good now. But that could be disastrous if you have your model sitting right there, a big old glob of paint just spurting right out on it. But all is well. So here I'm spraying, and I am spraying very light. You know, these metallic silver family colors, even though it's called tungsten, they spray so good that it doesn't take much. I am dusting probably only less than a quarter of a throttle and just barely letting that paint come out of that gun, and I'm getting color on my interior. And this is really helpful to minimize any chance of bleed through. So I'm squirting very, very, very lightly here. Okay, so next I'm going for one of the door panels, and if you remember that masking is very tedious there right around those door cranks. So I'm doing what I said in my advice there, is I'm painting in the direction away from the mask line, and that way nothing can bleed up and under your tape there. And once again, I'm spraying extremely, extremely light here. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up through the rest of the process. Okay, so the paint has been allowed to tack up for probably 15 minutes or so, and I'm going to remove my masking. And one tip is, when you're removing your masking, peel away from the paint edge, not toward it. I'll try to show you here. Okay, so I got my fine line and my masking. So I'm going to pull at about a 45-degree angle and away from my edge, like so. Okay, so once again, I'm going to grab my fine line and pull away from the tape edge. Okay, in some areas that fine line really stuck down, so I had to work at it a little bit to get it to peel up where I can get my tweezers onto it. So I used a toothpick instead of the metal, because it would scratch the underlying black paint less. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up about 8x, and then we'll be back. Okay, so I got everything unmasked, real good, nice crisp lines. And remember the importance I was telling you about spray away from your tape edge. You know, I had a tape right around those window cranks there. So it could have very easily bled up into that area, especially by that little vent window crank, but I sprayed in a downward pattern there. And if you noticed in the spray booth there, I just went one super light coat, because this paint just covers so well over the black. No need to load it up, and the lighter you go, the less risk of any kind of bleed through in your tape. So everything came up really nice. Front seat too. Okay. All right, so it is time to start assembling the interior. So I will be using super glue because everything has been painted. And let's see, a couple things here. First of all, the dashboard. And I don't know how well that comes through, but I put the decals on there for the instrument gauges, and also used the UV resin to make it look like there's a lens on there. So that came out looking pretty nice. And then I just took my little chrome pen and did my little window cranks. And then I used a little dull coat to paint the carpet area dull flat. So let's get to assembling. Okay, so I didn't catch it on camera, but I put the interior tub into the vehicle there, and I got the dashboard all assembled. And then I glued in that fabricated firewall. Get a shot of the interior here. I'll get a better one at the Revell, but of course the model's all dirty because I've been drilling, cutting, and doing all kinds of work, so it's not ready for Revell yet. Okay, so I'm going to work on the chassis here a little bit, and I'm going to get that installed. So first I got to get the wheels on. So next up, we're going to start working on this chassis here. So I'm going to get the exhaust glued on and the tires and wheels, and I'll speed that up. Okay, so I got my engine pretty well detailed the way I want it. So I got my distributor. This is a pre-wired distributor from Morgan Automotive Detail, www.madmodels.com. And for boots, I used a little bit of hose that I had, real thin little tubes, and I cut them about a 16th inch long, and they were a little bit bigger diameter. So I was able to stick them onto the blue wire, and then go into my pre-drilled holes into my heads and glue them into place. So it looks pretty good. I tried to do the firing order correctly, but I screwed up on one of them. So it's going to miss a little bit when you fire this up. Okay, well, next up, what I do. The 3D engine does not come with a starter, so I used the kit starter. And I drilled out and put a positive battery lead on there, which is going to run up, and ultimately, once this is all in the engine compartment, I'll connect that to the battery. The alternator I drilled out and put a negative battery lead on there, and that'll go to the negative post of the battery. Fuel lines, it's got a double pumper carburetor on there, so I used 0.3 millimeter solder wire and just drilled and glued into there. And that is just kind of running to the back of the block where it's just going to end. But under the hood, it'll look all plumbed and everything. So, looks pretty good. I got another cap to put on the other valve cover here. I'm just waiting for the paint to dry on that. And then this will go into the chassis. But that's about as far as I've taken it so far. There'll be a place for a radiator hose here to run. So, all right. Next up, we're going to get the chassis into the body. Okay, so I am going to marry the chassis to the body now. Now, typically you would put the engine in first if it was the kit, but I'm going to slide the chassis in first and then the engine, because I didn't want to glue that engine into place and have something not fit correctly, being that it's an aftermarket engine. So, and I fitted in there 100 times with the chassis in there, so I know that that's the best way to go. All right, so just turn the model over here. I have like this letter opener I use to just lightly pry my body. Didn't take much. Okay, so then I got the engine into place and attached all my lines, so that is complete. It looks pretty good in there. Okay, so now we're down to, I don't know, odds and ends, shocks, front grille, bumpers, door handles, all that little stuff here. So we're going to get to all the details and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're on the home stretch now, and I'm putting all the little decorations and trinkets on the outside. Yeah, door handles, mirrors, license plates, you name it. And where possible, I'm pinning the items. You know, I'm pinning them mainly because they're no longer just sitting on a shelf like they used to. I'm taking these to shows and whatnot, and I've already had a couple mirrors and door handles fall off on me during the travel, so, you know, pin the best you can. And what I'm using here is a little 15 thousandths diameter drill bit and a 15 thousandths diameter piece of piano wire that I got at Hobby Lobby. I used to use like 32 thousandths, but you know, it's much better to use the thin stuff. You can do much more finer details. And I'll have a description in my, or a link in my description for that pin vise. And I'll give an example here, like on the door handles, they have a little mark where they're going to go, but there's no real good way to glue that on there without it falling off. So I'll go ahead and drill and pin those door handles here, and I'll kind of show you what I did here. So the first thing I do is, it's such a tiny little area and your drill bit will wander on you. So I'm just using this little airbrush tip cleaner, spare one that I have, and I'm kind of marking a center hole there so that my drill bit will have a positive place to go instead of walking away on me. And then I just carefully drill, taking little turns at a time, and occasionally I'll just pull out and clean the drill bit because it does load up with styrene, and I found that pulling the bit out and cleaning it, it kind of just helps with the drill. And then once that glue is set on those door handles, I'm using a little bit pair of needle nose to cut my wire shorter, about an 1/8 inch long, because if they're 1/2 inch long, you know, they're going to go through the interior tub too, and you don't want to do that. So I'm just trimming them down to about an 1/8 inch long. Then next up, I'm just putting a little dot of super glue on each one of those little holes there. And then what I'm going to do is take those pieces of wire and stick them in the door handles. Then I'm going to set that aside and let that cure up for a little bit. Okay, so while I'm waiting for that piano wire to cure in the door handles, I'm going to go ahead and drill out the doors. It doesn't take much, and those little bits are very fragile, so don't push on them or anything, just spin and let them do the work. And it really doesn't take much to go right through. So now that the super glue has set, I'm just using my needle nose here to cut those wires down to about 1/8 of an inch tops, because at the length they would go right through the interior tub, and you certainly don't want to do that. So just enough to be able to fit inside that door and glue them into place. And then next up, I'll prop the car up so I can very clearly see exactly where I'm going to pin those so I don't make a mess with the glue. And just going to put a little dab of glue in my cap here, and then use a toothpick to glue a little bit of wire, and then I'll feed it onto the car. And then I repeat the process for the side mirror too. And here we are in the garage for the big reveal. Looks really good. Yeah, I like the stance on that. I like those oversized wheels. And I'm really glad that I tinted those down with the Tamiya smoke color. I think it just gave them a nicer look instead of the toy-like chrome that it had. And then looking at that front grille, I put just a little dot of Tamiya orange behind the lens there to kind of mimic just what the bulb would look like instead of having the entire lens painted that color. And here's a really nice rear quarter shot there. I'll tell you what, I really like that Kaleido paint job. That came out pretty sweet for a water-based acrylic. I used a little bit of the UV resin on the rear license plate frame. I really like that effect. It makes it look like it's got a lens cover on it. Here we get a nice shot of that 572 big block under the hood. And as I said at the beginning, this is one of my most detailed engines yet. Wired battery, wired spark plugs. I got plumbed brake system and fuel system. And here's a shot of that dashboard. Really a nice dashboard on this kit. There's actually 3 pieces. There's a top chrome center section and a bottom section. And a little shot of the two-tone upholstery. Okay, so I'll continue on with a little bit of a slideshow and then we'll take her over to the 360 table and just look at that reflection of that paint. Alright, then we'll give her a little spin on the 360 table and just be able to check her out from all angles. Really happy with that paint though. You know, it doesn't come out until you sand it, buff and polish it, but you know, I'd have to say that looks like a 2K paint job to me. All right, so that concludes the video of the build for the 56 Chevy Del Rey. I hope you enjoyed the build and hope you like my model. So what's next? Well, you know, we're approaching the holiday season. I think I'm gonna do a little departure here because I also play around at Christmas time and I do this big Lionel Christmas train setup. So I think I'll get that set up around the Thanksgiving holiday and I'll put that on video. Even though it's not automotive, it does have a lot of cars in it and I lit the cars and they're one little 148 scale cars. Got 2 trains running on there, all kinds of houses and you know, some cool scenes in it. So I'm looking forward to that. It's a little overkill for the holidays, but it's just one of the things I do. I gotta take everything over the top. And I'll probably do some green screen stuff with it too, so that'll be fun. Also, an upcoming build is a legendary builder from yesteryear has commissioned me, can you believe it? Commissioned me to build a model for him. Tremendous honor, and I hope I do it justice, but that's all I'm gonna say for now, but that one is coming up, and it's gonna be a lot of fun building it, and I sure hope he likes it. Folks, we'll see you next time, and happy Thanksgiving.